My name is Paul Nunesdea. I'm a certified professional facilitator from the IAF, which stands for International Association of Facilitators. Since 2018, I've started a book series on architecting collaboration, and my latest book, in co-authorship with Martin Duffy and other renowned digital facilitators and guest co-authors, is titled Beyond Virtual Meetings. It's all about the importance of the digital tools that can extend and augment the power of you as a facilitator and a meeting host in virtual online meetings, but also on the hybrid meetings that are going to be so much needed in this post-pandemic era. Along with my co-author Martin Duffy and his team PhD colleague, we host Talk to Your Meeting Doctors, a series of hosted conversations with meeting experts that can advise you about how to transition to this new normal and take advantage of this incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make the organization of your meetings more sustainable and effective. Please stand by as the next show will start momentarily.
Session 2 for the Druids. We know that some of us are selecting golf courses, others are distracted with some more important things, but this group is now going to focus on the next step in our design process. In the time remaining, which is an hour and roughly 15 minutes, I suggest we get cracking on where we left off last time. Just sharing the screen real quick, there is a link to the mural in the WhatsApp, in the chat right there. What I'd like to ask you to do, just to warm up your fingers a little bit, is to head over to that mural and see if you can find the big green spot, not because last time we left off we were on St. Patrick's Day, but because this is the place that all the ideas that have popped up in your head and goes, oh, we should be doing this at the Druids meeting, those go there, right? We're going to stick them in the quarantine. We're going to lock them up so they don't distract us whilst we're designing. So if you have ideas of what should be done, what should be included, what could be included, it doesn't matter. Don't judge the ideas, just drop them in. We already see some good stuff like the Hemingway way, design drunk, edit sober session. Stuff like I would naturally align the skeptics on why we need to meet in person. A cold Guinness draft, if it's still available after the quotas that have been put on the Guinness popularity after the TikTok rage, or anything else that comes up based in Ireland. Or if people have counteroffensive of other destinations that need to be considered, that's also a place to drop those. So idea quarantines are good when they're bursting in the seam, so keep adding stuff. Don't make your icons too big. And make sure that when you are contributing stuff, we can actually see and read what's there. Good.
Okay, absolutely. I would love to have a fireplace. So this could be something that will condition the time of the year where we are having this gathering. But fire for me is important element for this gathering. I don't know about you guys.
Fire is always good.
A cracking fireplace.
Whether it's
But of course, if we do this in the summer, then let me see if I could put here a nice.
All right. So what I'd like to do, whilst you can keep adding stuff to the idea quarantine, what I'd like to ask you to do in the meantime then is to actually head over to the space that's right next to it, where we left off last time, which is the stakeholder alignment canvas. And we're going to go and see if we can go to that space. Bear with me. And last time we created a long list of stakeholders who might be involved in this event, and we started looking at the overarching aim of the event. And let's go back to that zoom factor for a second. Here we go. Stakeholder alignment canvas. Bear with me because my
Another idea I have is that for the concept of forest facilitation, I mentioned you, where we could have these walks in the wild and having this dialogue with nature.
If we can focus on the stakeholder alignment canvas, that's just off to the right from the
Okay.
quarantine. We're going to zoom into that for a second.
Okay.
And bear with me, I'm just reopening my mural because I was using the wrong
stakeholder alignment, yes. So that's the
stakeholder alignment canvas. That's where we left off last time. Yeah. Here we go. And what you're going to see there is that last time we formulated an overarching aim. And we had a long list of stakeholders on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
The first thing to warm up your fingers would be make sure all of the stakeholders in the long list that are there, each post-it has a different color. So if we could do a quick little revamp so they're not all yellow, but they all have a different color, that would be highly appreciated. And let's see how quickly facilitators can do that collectively without instruction.
Whoops. Oh, I've created a connection without intention. Let me see if I can delete this.
You can always undo things if you, on the top, there's a little undo button. Look at that. The whole spectrum of colors is coming to life as the facilitators re-look at their stakeholder long list. Now, in the next exercise, what we're going to do, and I'm just sharing the screen for those that are looking at the recording. In the next exercise, what I'd like to focus on for a second is based on our overarching aim that we formulated, the long version of that, let me read that out to you, was to revolutionize the practice of meeting design by establishing a global community of meeting druids. The community will pioneer innovative research-based guidelines that advocate for the transformative power of in-person meetings. The blending creativity with strategic insight, the meeting druids aim to solve the meeting load paradox, enhancing the efficacy and engagement of events. This initiative will serve as a beacon for the learning and development, fostering a new era of event facilitation that champions the greater good and leads to a measurable increase in meaningful real-life interactions worldwide. All right, anybody that can memorize that and recite it at any time after you're shaken 3 times in the middle of the night, good luck to you. That's why we created a little haiku for us to hang on to, which summarizes this. Meeting druids rise, crafting spaces, face-to-face. New bonds, worlds embrace.
Okay, I love that.
The 575 might be easier to remember, although still the wordsmithing behind it, done by AI, can maybe be improved by the magical brains in this Druid gathering, okay? So this is nothing fixed, it's just what we have for now.
Okay.
However, the important thing we need to do next is that we need to take all of these post-its that we have over here on the left, and we need to figure out where they fit, where these post-its fit in this matrix that's here in the middle, right? So what you're going to do without speaking in the next couple of minutes is you're going to take any of these things like the skeptics and you're going to drag it to a place. And for now, just focus on, do these people have low interest or high interest, right? Small heart, big heart. And look at the gradient of power. How much power do the skeptics have over achieving the overarching aim of what we have on the right, okay? And you can drop them anywhere. And if you disagree with where somebody else dropped it, you can pick it back up and drop it somewhere else. Okay? Now you have to do this without speaking. And I'm going to see how long you last. The instruction is that all of the post-its on the left must go on the matrix in the middle. Do not get distracted by the 4 words in the corner, in each of the corners, right? Which I know you're distracted by already. Focus only on the hearts, low interest, high interest, low power, high power, over achieving the overarching aim. Go ahead. If you think your audio is broken, no worries. This is a silent exercise. Stopwatch is running, just to let you know. I want to see how long this takes. If you feel that there are stakeholders missing in the mix that we came up with last time, you can add those. If you feel like some of the descriptions are not clear enough for people to understand what it is, you can wordsmith the post-it to make
I
it
think
clearer.
we are done, Ruud.
You already done?
Yes.
Does that mean your fearless leader, Paul, assumes that you are unanimously in violent agreement of everything that's on the board at this very moment after 46 seconds?
I mean, the
read
task
where
of
they are.
removing the stakeholders and place them in the map, I think that's done. Now we need a little bit of facilitation on where to go next with this information. I'm going to have lots of laughs with these guys that are the disbelievers of meetings.
They have more power if they decide to be vocal about.
Really? That's a good.
Well, it depends. Someone who's just not interested and doesn't care whether you run it or not has no power over it. But someone who is a disbeliever in the whole thing and is interested enough to oppose the concept could have significant power.
Yeah, active cynics are much more powerful than
One very loud,
silent cynics who just kind of mumble in the coffee breaks.
But I would love to bring to these Druid gatherings all the ones who are, meeting professionals that like us, we are a sample here, that want to expand on the concept of meetings in different dimensions, of course. But would this gathering also be open to these guys that are disbelievers, or CEOs that are curious about what we are cooking? I wonder.
Think about the power and interest over achieving the overarching aim. And at the same time, question your overarching aim. Is this really what you want to do? Is this why we're going to gather?
Can I ask a question, just taking off from where Paul dropped in there? There's quite a different concept between a meeting that's primarily between people who are conveners of meetings and one that would involve people who need meetings to happen, the clients, if you like. A meeting just between people who convene meetings. Yeah, I think those two gatherings would be different. I hadn't really thought about which one we were talking about.
Good point. Good point. Curious to hear from others.
I'll be honest, I'm still trying to catch up with the whole idea and concept. So I know we kind of answered this, but maybe it's evolving. Who is this? Are we designing something for an event, or is it the design of potential multiple events that can then be shared with organizations or other people or communities?
the overarching aim can be beyond just this one event, right? So
Right.
technically, the overarching aim is the top of the mountain that for Paul and Martin to say, mission accomplished, right?
Mm.
And this is what big boxes checked, so to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is it that desire for Paul and Martin to meet once over golf and a Guinness? You know, does it require all of these stakeholders, or could we just say, you know, Paul, hop on a flight to Ireland and meet Martin, go have a Guinness and play some golf and let us know how it went? Or, you know, do we need something different?
Mm. Yeah.
I guess one.
And I'm just challenging your thinking here a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because
After you, Karin.
But yeah, but let's use the meeting, the Druids Gathering, as a metaphor or as an image, or so Druids gather in the past to become better Druids in the end, right? So that's what I hope from this meeting.
Right.
Is I want my superpowers to be reinforced. I want to leave this meeting as a better meeting Druid. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Well, can I pose a question for you then, Paul? And it's buried in the overarching aim.
Yeah.
In different ways, we see ourselves as having some expertise in this domain.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Martin particularly, you know, the whole years of doing the meeting, doctors and things. Do we have any reason to believe that we have something unique if we bring these druids together? No, a bit differently. Do we believe we have the credibility to draw together druids of sufficient power, shall we say, to create something that is truly unique? And who, you know, who are we thinking those druids are? Are we thinking within Europe? Are we thinking worldwide?
Worldwide, absolutely, worldwide. I want people from Australia, if they can join us.
Oh,
Absolutely.
well, that's solved.
Yeah, that's worldwide, Paul. We are definitely the ones we are in this call. We are druids,
Okay.
meeting druids, definitely. I have no doubt about that. And of course, there will be many more. The thing is, obviously, is the barrier. In the end, we have to create us who is going to be allowed to join this meeting, who is not allowed to join, right? And if even and if we want to be inclusive, could we be offering parts of this gathering for others, right? So we could have like an internal, a closed session for us, right? Just for us, druids, and then we can have an open session for the public, and that could be our clients. So we could say, hey, clients, look what we have discovered here this time. By being gathering, we have discovered advancing this concept. How about you? And evolve the discussion of the clients in a public session that could be the next day or in the end of the third day. So that's one I think we can. And maybe the guys in the public session, the participants in the public session could be funding the effort by paying a fee to attend and learn from the druids that will be gathered the day before. It's wild.
It just sort of reminds me of, has anybody ever heard of the Berlin Change Days?
Yeah, I heard about that. Yes.
Yeah. So you know that gets the Berlin Change Days has grown as an example. So Holger Neumeyer, who created this, must be 15 years ago, if not more. So it's more for change agents around the world. So it started in Berlin, and hence it's been called the Berlin Change Days. But there is now the Australasian Change Days, cutely named ACDC. There is there's the Toronto Change Days, and they're about to. So the Berlin Change Days is kind of now morphing So the next one will actually be in Spain? No.
In Spain? Oh, I
well,
might attend if that's in Spain. It will be in Spain. I don't know.
Oh, you would love it. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's Spain or no, it might be Netherlands. I have to double check. But anyway, it might be anyway, wherever it is. So this year it's kind of evolving. Last year they did it up in the Alps, the Italian Alps. So it's starting to morph. So there's people from within that community that are now starting to branch out and in different regions. But the core is still connected to the Berlin Change Days or the concept of it. And there's a set of rules that were created. It was based around open space technology, and I've been to a couple, and there's all sorts of things from archery events to live drawing events where everybody's together. So there's all sorts of activity then that gets involved, and this kind of reminds me of that. I think where we're heading, that's what I was kind of getting at. Yeah,
that's shaped my question a little bit. Are you thinking, Paul and Martin, of an event that would be sufficiently notable, shall we say, that Holger Naumeyer would actually want to come? And I've just run a quick thing down through ChatGPT, so what ChatGPT thinks of as the top 10 people in the world in the domain of meeting hosting for impact, and it's Priya Parker, Art of Gathering. Holger Niemeyer actually came in second, actually.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
Nancy Duarte, David.
So sorry, Paul. Can you repeat again? What was the question you asked Chat and Olga?
Who are the most recognized thought leaders in the world of meeting design and hosting for impact?
Okay, that's nice.
You come up with people like Holger Niemeyer, Nancy Duarte, who I know of, David Siebert, who I know of, Harrison Owen, who's seriously died, so ChatGPT getting that wrong. But Tokyo Monica from the Art of Hosting, Elise, interesting, comes up. But I'm wondering what's in your mind, Paul and Martin.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, these folks would be so much welcome in the Druid Gathering, definitely. And we are talking also about, the inventors of the World Cafe. Are they there?
That kind of thing.
Rosita
They
Brown,
didn't come up,
Rosita Brown.
but I only gave it 10, so.
Rosita Brown or something like that. I mean, even Harrison Owen, the inventor of open space technology, he would be the most welcome. I mean, we would put him a red carpet. I mean, in my view, because these guys have conceptualized technologies, social technologies in ways that are impacting the lives of millions.
I don't know who's running RST now because Harrison Owen died. So
yeah.
But I mean.
But you see, Paul, what you're raising, if these Druid gatherings could elevate the profile of these contributors to the field, that's also part of the overarching goal, right? To raise the profile of the importance of what we are doing in the world, right?
Can I ask a silly question in that regard? Will gathering the Druids, will that raise the profile, or does it require other people to raise the profile?
Can you repeat the question, Ruud? Sorry, I got distracted.
Gathering the Druids, preaching to the converted to each other, raise the profile, or would it require others to raise the profile? Who makes the difference here?
I would say that we shouldn't be meeting with that in mind. We should be selfish in this meeting. Selfish for us, for improving ourselves as we gather, right? And that's the main goal here, right? So if the persons who also follow us would like to attend as the next day as followers, as attendants, as that's okay. And if in the process of us organizing this, Olga and others would be willing to join us, that's also more than welcome. What we have to decide in a point in time is that should we have, in the process of us being selfish, inviting someone like, you know, Harrison Owen to our gathering so we can learn from him. Or Nehemiah if
about 3 months ago.
Of Olga, yeah.
Yeah, Harrison Owen died 2 months ago.
So Harrison Owen died.
Yeah,
2
Harrison
months
Owen
ago.
died a couple of months ago.
Oh
It was,
my
it was,
God,
yeah.
you're giving me the news.
That's right, isn't it? It is Harrison Owen that died.
Harrison died. Oh, but I'm in the US list. Nobody.
Open space. Yes.
Yeah, Harrison
Yeah,
Owen.
died. It was announced a couple of
Died.
months.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh. So yeah, we could pay him a tribute.
Any of the other people, anyway.
Any
mean,
of the other few.
But you're talking here, Paul, about something that would. There's no starting and ending point to this. If the aspiration is a meeting to which current thought leaders in meeting hosting who are thinking of what matters in the world now for meetings and what might matter in the future at a level of Holger Niemeyer, of the people who are running World Cafe or are running Liberating Structures, or David Siebert or other people like that, or I mean, go even slightly wilder, Simon Sinek or someone like that.
Yeah.
And a meeting that is of significance that they would want to be there.
Yeah.
Would then be self-sustaining because lots of other people would want to be there.
Yeah.
I think the question at that level is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how senior you are as a druid in that community, Paul and Martin, to be the person who sends the call out. I don't know where these people are already potentially meeting, because there has to be something different about this, doesn't there? If you really are aiming that far up the pile in terms of people who are at least seen to be leading thought in this area, that may or may not be true, but they're seen to be leading thought.
I mean, my friends, I would learn from you guys attending. Let's be also modest here. I'll be learning with my peers, with the ones I consider to be slightly better than me, or a little bit not so good as I am, but you know, in the range. For instance, from Steve Bather for me is 2 points above me. I will learn a lot with Steve. Karin is 2 points above me in the way she conducts our space. Paul, you are 2 points above me in the way you conduct hybrid. So I will learn with you guys in this gathering, and I want to be selfish here. I want to learn with you guys. Probably you also learn a little bit with some things I might say, you know, or Martin, because I would learn from Martin. So I would learn definitely from Ruud, if Ruud also join us. I mean, I think we are enough for us to deliver value to ourselves, right? So in this process, we have to decide, okay, so as druids, as meeting druids, should we also invite someone like Olga Niemeyer or Nancy Duarte or whatever, or David Siebert or Simon Sinek? I mean, and would they be interested in joining us in that particular gathering? Maybe, who knows? But if I don't care. If they join it, they accept a human, humble invitation from us, just for the sake of the gathering, right? Just for the sake of this human gathering.
Congratulations. We're 17 minutes and 54 seconds into this exercise. The one thing that we have demonstrated together, which is a classic, is that this is a stakeholder misalignment canvas, right? And not the stakeholder alignment canvas, because it raises more questions in the head of the event owner than we as designers together are able to answer at this stage. However, the good and the bad news for Paul and Martin is they do have to take a decision on what the overarching aim is of this gathering. And based on that, we have to determine who are the stakeholders that have high power and high interest, and who and how and on who do we need to delight, because those are the ones we need to design for, right? So it doesn't matter much what you decide, Paul and Martin, although it does, right? Because at the end of the day, as soon as you raise the question of we should gather druids in Ireland with, you know, golf and beer and then Guinness, your designers will come up with 20,000 questions you haven't thought up yet based on that initial proposition. My take at this stage would be that, take what we do know, which is we kind of seem to unanimously agree on the Meeting Druids Rise, crafting spaces, face-to-face, new bonds, worlds embrace. I've asked ChatGPT in the meantime to come up with some images to guide us, because it's sometimes easier with images than with words to picture what it looks like. It still looks like a stuffy gathering of old people in capes with long beards, if you ask me.
Or
right?
a cult, Ruud.
I mean, Steve, your goatee is very short, so I don't know when this event will take place, but I will definitely have to grow a beard and grow my hair, which I just got cut today. But all kidding aside, what would make it aspirational for the people around this table, but also for others to say, I cannot be missed at this gathering. How do I secure my seat, right? And Karin, the fact that you think about the change days in Berlin, or there might be 15 or 20 other events that we might not even have heard about that are taking place across other parts of the world. That's a given, right? That's what happens to any event owner at any time, which is great, because it means that there's a lot of events out there that have this need and that people take effort in gathering for.
I think need is an interesting question, or assessment, or distinction might actually be a better word, in that what is the need? So for the individual, so sometimes it's just about community. What's held the Berlin Change Days together for so long is the community that has built up around it. Not everybody goes to everyone because they can't. They're all over the world now, but some people try. By the way, the next one's in, the closest one is Rotterdam. So I'm sort of leading me down the thoughts of, is the initial one, so is this an iterative process? So the initial one is actually not as organized as maybe it could be, but maybe it's a bit looser, small, to discover what it could be, with some designed elements, but for what this could then in the future be.
And before we go into the what ifs of this, right? So put the what ifs in the idea quarantine, if you don't mind, right? So those could be prototypes or things you could do. But now I'd like to focus on who needs to be delighted for this thing to take off, right? Who has high power and interest to have Meeting Druids rise, craft spaces, face-to-face, new bonds, and worlds embrace? Who has a stake in this that needs to be delighted? And this was the initial question, right? So in terms of stake, currently, if we would start designing now, I would say it takes about 1 hour to design for each of these respective ones that we have up here in this quadrant, right? Not that we wouldn't design for any of these others that are over here. We'll just check later if we need to involve them, satisfy, or inform them. But at this stage, what we would do is start off by the beneficiaries of the Druids, and the facilitation professionals and associations. And then potentially, if we have more time, this would be hour 4, meeting owners and other conveners or meeting specialists, right? So if we want to analyze all of these, it's going to take us 5 hours to create the analysis and the narratives from these 5 stakeholder perspectives. And the question to ask is, how distinctly different are their behaviors, or are there clusters here that we can look at because they behave in similar patterns when it comes to gathering and Meeting Druids rise, crafting spaces, face-to-face, new bonds, worlds embrace? That's the only question we have to answer for now. Who are the top 2 or 3 that you want to analyze that need to be delighted for this thing to take off in the first place?
Yeah. I would say definitely the Druids, and I apologize if I'm taking the floor too many often, but let me also share what I'm thinking about. Have you guys heard about the Dîner en Blanc events? Dinner in white?
Oh, yes.
Have you heard about that, Karin?
Yes.
It's an amazing gathering. Everybody goes and have dinners. Everybody has to wear whites, and they have to dine in it's in a park or it's something like that. But there should be some videos in YouTube you can. So that's the magic behind that kind of gatherings that I would love to have us to implement on these Druid gatherings, right? Something that it's for the sake of us to gather together in Ireland, in that particular mystic place, and that's the principle, right? Because and everybody enjoys the Dîner en Blanc. It's like a unique, memorable experience everybody takes. I think it's even expensive because people have to pay to register to attend, and that's a self-sustaining event process. And it's franchisable actually, right? Because you can host the Dîner en Blanc, but you need to talk with the organizers in order to be able to be approved to do it under the rules, right? So that's what I throw into the table, to the idea pool here on one hand, and definitely I would say that it's for us, it's for our own, selfish improvement, amusement, fun. It's for ourselves, right? Now, I also agree that the Berlin Change Days as a nice formula. Karin, please correct me if I'm wrong because I've never attended the event. But the Berlin Change Days for me has the potential of bringing together under the same roof clients and change consultants, right? Because I suppose that if I'm a manager and I want to change my company, as I probably would like to attend Berlin Change Days, right? So I'm not sure if that's the case, Karin.
It's not really in my experience. It may have been in the very earlier days, but these days I think it's more the gathering of the change makers and then how they can go out and impact the world.
But you mean change makers as change consultants, or
yes, they're change consultants.
The consultants, okay.
Yeah. Well, they're a mixture, but yeah. Predominantly people go out there earning a living from being changed.
From the process, yes, from change professionals, we could call them, right?
Yes. Yeah. So okay.
But in our case, maybe we could do it a little bit of a twist, like to say we can have the gathering, the Druids Gathering, and then the day after, a more public events, it could be even hybrid global, where people can join us and we could interact with the wider audience, with the beneficiary, with the box in gray, meeting owners.
Let me hand it quickly to Paul, the other Paul, if you don't mind.
Well, just observing in that last 3 or 4 minutes of discussion, I think there's two very, very interestingly different and contrasting visions in there. One is something that I think Paul actually said it, is that part of the goal is our interest, that the goal in the Berlin Change is people who are earning a living from doing that. And that seems to me to be a very different vision of what is conjured up for me by the use of the term Druids, which is much more a selfless gathering, potentially, looking to the future, for the greater good, if you like. I don't know how selfless Druids actually were, but the concept, the contrast, for example, between the Dîner Blanc with the, coattails and white shirts and so forth, and Druids who would have been in very simple clothing, gathering in a very simple way, struck me as quite a large contrast in those last few minutes. Those seem to be two very, very different design concepts.
Other Paul thoughts?
I was reading the Change Day principles that Steve shared here with us. Yes.
Try not to get distracted by those. Dump those in the idea quarantine for now, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What we're not doing here is replicating something that already exists. We are creating something based on the idea in the head of the event owners, right? So, and it's very tempting to find the 10 differences or spot the 10 similarities between what's already there and what's not yet there, right?
We'll turn it round then, Ruud. Turning to the two event owners, Paul and Martin. Oh, Martin's not here. Between a spectrum of druids meeting in simple circumstances in a humble situation for the greater good versus a very nice dinner with white tie and CEOs and so forth, where on that spectrum that I've created, unless you just agree with the spectrum altogether, where on that spectrum were you in your minds thinking this would be?
Sorry, Paul, but your question is, say again.
If I draw a spectrum between a gathering which is characterized by what I think of as druids, yeah.
Okay.
So that would be people gathered in very humble circumstances, very humbly clothed, doing something in their terms for religious, but let's say for the greater good, yeah.
And the other option is?
Almost explicitly not doing it. This is the dinner blanc thing, and lots of chief executives gathering and this kind of thing, with a focus on promoting, get what they could get out of it. Would we have such and such a person there? Well, would they come, or what would they get out of it? That seems to me two different and slightly conflicting visions, and I'm wondering whether I'm creating a conflict, whether that's not there in your head, Paul, or whether that's something this meeting would need to think.
It's a good, I mean, I don't think there's a conflict there, because for the ones with the suit, and I wear a suit for many years in my life as a CEO in a company. For the ones in the suit that want to learn from us druids, we will be opening space for that to happen in the last day, for instance. That will be possible. We can actually include a knowledge cafe session with them, whatever involves them in the conversation, or a world cafe where a druid will be in the table and non-druids will be gathering, and then we could do a process like that in the open to the public day, or a more formal lecture type style or panel discussion where people will be in the audience wearing suits, and we could be with our druid costumes in the panel. That's fine, whatever. But I'll think that the kind of clients that could come to a gathering like this would be not the guys who wear suits, would be perhaps entrepreneurs, different styles of clients, or even why not civil servants, policymakers. Who knows? We could attract to the public event, public side of the gathering. But I don't see that as in a conflict. We could be ourselves, humbly dressed as druids in the closed session, in the session for us, and then we'll figure out if we have to wear the casual suits on the public day.
I think I was thinking more of the inner stance and the purpose of it than the actual clothing, Paul.
Okay. But in my mind, I have it as a journey for ourselves, an event for ourselves, for us, for our own pleasure, for our own amusement, for our own development, and that's it. That's what we want to. Okay. And wearing whatever clothes we feel like.
Okay, let's drop the clothes in the idea quarantine for a minute. This is typically what happens in an event owner, event designer conversation, what we're going through right now. And it's even more painful for the event owner than for the event designers, just to be clear, right? Because having a hunch of what you want to do versus actually getting it done or getting it designed requires clarity on the overarching aim, what it represents. And designers are peeling away at the challenge of figuring out what it is and what it's not. And at this point, that's not so important yet, right? That comes later. At this point, what's really important is to determine who has high stakes, high power, high interest to achieve the overarching aim. And whilst you were having that debate, which usually after 13 minutes happens to all groups that do a stakeholder alignment exercise, which is great. You are no different. Only your event owner thought after 45 seconds you're already done and you had the answer. The longer we debate and kick the ball around, the more confused we become, which is fine, because the confusion is the rocket fuel for the being in the state of wonder. And the state of wonder is where we want to be as designers, to come up with the possible options. So in the meantime, I've asked ChatGPT to, based on our inputs, to figure out what it thinks the stakeholder map would look like, right? Not that should be of any influence to what we do, but it's always good to have a second opinion from a more general kind of overview. In this overview, there is a number of things apparent. One of them is, it says that meeting leaders and meeting owners, especially the meeting owners, are probably the ones that have the highest power and highest interest over whether this is relevant or not. So the people that actually own the events and need to have them done. And I would tend to agree with that.
That's ChatGPT?
Yeah. So I gave ChatGPT our input and gave it the same matrix and had it do our homework for us. Now this is, by no way the answer, but it does beg the question, for that, it says the facilitation professionals, the druids, so to say, are part of those that need to be delighted. And then the thought leaders from the global meeting design space as stakeholders in this overview that need to be delighted. In the quadrant to the right bottom hand corner, which is high power but relative lower interest, would be all sorts of parties, so as other conveners or meeting specialists, storytellers. Let me just see what it says here. So in the delight quadrant, we would have, well, let me check here.
And I like to see family members in the other corner, because we keep forgetting about family members, right?
So high power, high interest would be meeting scientists who bring legitimacy, data, and frameworks to the initiative. Thought leaders from other global meetings, designers and change makers who help shape the direction and lend credibility. Facilitation professionals and associations, crucial allies in implementation and message spreading. The druids, metaphorically or literally, central figures in symbolism and delivery. Meeting leaders and followers who can scale and amplify the change. And then meeting owners who control access and decision making. In the ones that need to be satisfied, high power, low interest would be the venue, logistical linchpin, and the commercial brand implications. Calendaring systems may seem peripheral, but hold significant influence over time and attention. Clients of the druids may not be deeply engaged, but they buy in and affirm legitimacy. Other conveners or meeting specialists with potential allies or competitors. And high interest, high power, natural allies and brand ambassadors will be people who enjoy being in real life, emotionally invested in potential champions, spiritual healers, values aligned, might inspire others, beneficiaries of the druids, indirect stakeholders but highly impacted, representatives of Gen Z engaged in urgent but limited systemic power yet, family members who provide personal motivation and support. In the informed quadrant, according to it, low power, low interest, monitor lightly but don't overinvest would be the golf enthusiasts, likely peripheral. The skeptics, who track sentiment and may shift over time. Those who are wary of meetings may become interested if reframed. And the disbeliever in meetings and collaboration, unlikely to convert but keep informed for influence spreading. Potentially missing stakeholders, it says here, is policy influencers and regulators, if applicable. Those in the well-being or cultural innovation space. Sponsors and funders, if any backing is needed. Technologists, platform providers, if hybrid or tech-enabled platforms are in play. and media storytellers who are critical in amplifying the post-event impact. So I think with our thinking and some help from some external thinking, I think you're starting to see a picture, right? Which is a little bit clearer or less fuzzy than we had before. It feels to me like the meeting owners would definitely need to be involved in some way or other, because without the ones that actually implement the change or can actually, it's great if the converted speak to each other.
Yeah, but meeting owners, I think, Ruud, and thanks for this ChatGPT benchmarking. I think meeting owners could be definitely involved, but in a way that we could, from our reflections, right? Because what is it that makes valuable an in-presence gathering versus an online gathering, right? Because right now we are online, we are working, we are producing our work, we have outcomes, right? What's the difference of doing this physically, right? Because meeting owners pay a hell lot of money for these gatherings to happen, right? Sales conventions, and so what's the value of humans being together? What's the added value? And we as druids, as meeting druids, on our reflection, we can go deeper in this, and we can then have conclusions and share the conclusion. But it's interesting that there's in my line of business, we conduct meetings for sponsors, right, who sponsor our gatherings. And what's the value of a meeting sponsor, in like in the pharma industry? There's thousands and thousands of euros spent, as you would know perfectly well in gatherings. And what's the value we produce, as meeting druids, and that's something that we could also share with our meeting owners, definitely, for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's an economic value in a meeting, right?
Well, the conundrum there is the question we started with, right? So how does your event create value? Right. So if you're able to answer that question, or if you're unable to answer that question, then your role will be annihilated or will be irrelevant, right? So I think the ability to articulate value, to demonstrate value, and to be able to deliver value is at the core of why events are taking place in the first place.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm eager to jump into the canvas, Ruud, because that's where I see the value. But
you first need to determine who you need to delight before you can start mapping out the stakeholder's perspective of what that narrative looks like for that stakeholder you want to delight. Because otherwise, we're shooting with hail into a barrel of fish without knowing who we want to hit.
Because we can take the canvas and draw the canvas for different stakeholders, right?
Yeah, and each stakeholder analysis takes about an hour. So knowing that our time is precious and not everybody is engaged in being there, we need 7 people to do that per stakeholder. And I'm happy to spend my time, but I want to make sure that we're working on the right ones, right? Back to the other Paul, you have your hand raised. Hold on.
I'm just curious about whether in what Paul N just said, there's a new boundary, if you like, a new piece of specification there.
Yeah.
We are talking about a Meeting Druids event about meeting in general and the future of meetings and getting value from meetings, or from what Paul was just saying, the explicit value of meeting in person in a world now dominated by meeting online.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question as an example. If the process we're doing online here were to take place in Ireland for 2 days, but we wouldn't have time for golf. We would only drink Guinness when we start prototyping on day 2. And we have to be sober and not do the Hemingway way. We can only be drunk in Post-its for day 1.
Yeah.
On day 2, we can go a little bit further. Like, would that be of interest enough, so to say, to gather the core of the people that could create whatever that looks like in the future differently than what we're doing now?
if just a thought, it's for me, this is about energy. So it's between, I love this world, but nothing beats being with a bunch of people, like-minded people.
Yeah.
And
so what if you could design
it's
in a
energy.
room with people with actual artifacts and, you know, of course you could have golf clubs and things beyond that space if you wanted to. But technically doing a design like this, typically when we do it, it takes, you know, 2 days. I'm not saying that that's what you should be doing, but typically people find value in doing that before they actually do the event, right? Or whatever comes out the other end might be worthwhile doing. And all of this can be done perfectly online, by the way. There's no shortage of, you have the skills, the tools, everything's here. We do this all the time too, right?
I'm really curious about the premise of your question, Ruud.
Well, I'm asking it to create contrast between what was said just before, right?
Well, let me share the contrasting reaction I'm feeling inside of it. I haven't been to a 1, 2, or 3 day gathering professionally for at least a decade or more, where people were there for anything other than the chief content. It's a very, very long time. Now, maybe it's the people I work with or the context I work in. Maybe the sales teams of major pharmaceutical companies are still holding events where 50% of the value to them is the drink and the golf. I haven't been to an event where people were there for the secondary reasons, maybe for 20 years. But that may be because I don't work in the private sector with sales teams and those kind of people. It's an observation.
Yeah. I agree, Paul. I probably haven't been to that kind of gathering for a very long time. And other Paul, it reminds me so much of the Fresh events that I discovered and met you through, which I'm going to stab at being at least 15 years ago, if not 20. And a very different place in my career, but a willingness to learn and a sharing of opportunity, tools, technologies, techniques, approaches. So I learned an awful lot from them and met some great people who were all doing similar things or trying to make a living in a similar way. And I get that kind of being nurtured, being kind of connected, being understood, being able to share gathering sense.
Yeah.
But I'm also finding myself reacting to that's an itch I've had for a long time, which I am scratching most recently by, during lockdown, creating what became to be known as a kind of a trusted cohort. And we are still meeting 5 years later, and we basically have very little agenda other than we try and commit to spend 90 minutes together once a month. Sometimes it doesn't work once a month, but we've had some incredibly fascinating conversations about the types of things that we're applying in our work, new techniques we're coming up with, books we've read. There's an awful lot about AI and adding value to events by processing information, assets, discussions, videos, post-event to make sure there is value back to the client. And that it's a trusted cohort because it's a small group of people. I think there's probably 18 on the list, and anything between 4 and 12 people turn up at any one event. And they're always in some way valuable, but I'm not sure whether I could list the 5 things that I get value from, but it is just a very connected, nurturing space where you're free and willing to and able to share different ideas, try new things, innovate, create. So I'm thinking, well, I've already got this, and of course that's a virtual group. We have met in smaller groups, and we've had a steak and a beer together in London quite often when 2 or 3 of us happen to be there. But these are people who I have known for well over 20 years, who just came together during that first panic of COVID, thinking, oh God, what are we going to do? But the key questions for those cohorts are things like, why are we relevant in this context? What is AI going to do to our industry, our ability to to guide and be professional in this space? What is it? What is the future and the big transition into virtual working, which some of us had promoted for 15 years as a nice to have. It was always a nice to have. Yes, Steve, we'll that sounds great. We can do that, but let's do that next time. Let's spend $250,000 on a conference and get everybody together and have a really good time. Was still the kind of the way these organizations felt that they had to convene this kind of in-person meeting. And then suddenly in COVID, online became a must-have. And people were scrambling to find better ways of collaborating, innovating, making decisions, tracking decisions, and making sense of the world that they were in from their own perspective. So I'm sort of interested in this as a concept, but I don't have this kind of itch or this need anymore because I've found a way to satisfy that need, through my trusted cohort and attending events like Freshball.
Yeah, I mean, this could be. I mean, I'm not sure if you are all familiar with the fresh concept of Martin Van Este, Karin, and Paul Brand, and Ruud. But this could be a fresh for facilitators.
Yeah.
But in a sense that, and obviously, and also, I think it will be important for me is that these two worlds need to combine a little bit more, right? Because there's the world of facilitation, and Paul Brand is perhaps the one I see most of his activities. I follow Paul on LinkedIn, but I think it's 1 in 5 or 10 meetings Paul hosts is public, right? Most of
they vary. Yes, yeah.
But you normally you're hired to do internal company meetings, right?
Yeah.
And this is a world of professionals like Paul and dozens of other colleagues in the IAF. And then on the other hand, we have meeting professionals that are paid to organize public events.
Yeah.
And the value that we facilitators can bring to public events, that's work not done.
Yeah.
Paul, it's work not done. And that's what I think these Druid gatherings could raise the importance of this kind of skills, process facilitation skills that are so necessary in these kinds of public events. They could, and how can we benefit from being employed there, because we generate value. I've just came from my last meeting was by the way last week, and we did a think tank closed session with a very plain vanilla methodology of World Cafe. You cannot imagine the value we generated. And these type of events are still so unusual in the world of public events. They're not the much. And I reckon how different would the world be if by default on every public event a World Cafe would have to happen.
Yeah. As opposed to a series of 23 speakers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You get me. So that by doing this Druids gathering, we will raise the importance of the process leadership work that we offer, right? And on all sorts of gatherings and events, whether it be internal, external, public, whatever,
And the world has never needed it more than right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't. Dare to say so, but that's the mutual understanding that we need to generate and create. Yeah, right. And on the other hand, there's the online, on-site, the physical gathering we have to explore, because by being physically together, could we go deeper on the spiritual dimension of facilitation? That's a question. So we answer, right? What's the added value? Because anyway, I realized this week I'm now going to host the Smart Cities and Digital Health Summit, right? So, and we have sponsors willing to jump on board with us, and that's great. I mean, I'm pleased with that. But the reason I'm saying this is that obviously everybody understands that's the physical presence, that's the fact that you are with the potential client that generates business for your company.
Yes.
I mean, you as a facilitator, Paul, you would never be hired by someone who would not be physically with you.
Oh no, I get some people who hire to do entirely online.
You made the case for my online store. Great.
But you raise an interesting thing that I probably get used to the idea that many meetings are facilitated and process design because those are the kind of things I do. You're talking about the remaining world of people who organize gatherings of people in their interest area, who still think it's a valuable use of people's time to get them together to sit in rows and listen to someone talk at them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if they get lucky, they might get a 20-minute little group work exercise in the middle of it. Because they're scared that if they don't give all this input from the front, no value has been generated. And it's the old thing of being scared of releasing control to the group instead of keeping control with the great and the good who you expect to speak from the front. And that's an interesting thread.
That's an amazing thread. And Harrison Owen, just you know, the reason why people still sponsor these absolutely awful events where you know have these stages in the stage, you know, is that there are coffee breaks, and that's where you know sales.
That's where it happens.
They're about networking.
That's because of the coffee breaks.
Yeah.
And that's the reverse engineering that Harrison Owen said. Why would we
the whole meeting coffee break and
coffee break?
Well, I haven't run an event in the last 15 years that hasn't been you know, more than 40%, 35% presenting. And I start with a design rule, which is that nobody speaks for more than 6, 9, or if they're really, really important and expensive, 14 minutes. You know, there's a reason why a TED talk is 14 minutes long.
Absolutely.
And I always insist on equal time of Q&A to the amount of time the speakers had, and often do it in a panel. So that there's you know, at least half the time, more than half the time, is people actually interacting. You know, with collaboration technology as well as verbally in the old-fashioned ways, and really build in those you know, those break times, because I know that's when people actively connect. And I set that up right at the beginning of, you know, a 2 or 3 day event by encouraging people. The first thing they do is stand up and move and sit with somebody they don't know.
Absolutely, Steve. And guys, you know, I'm looking at these page principles that you have shared here, Steve, on the change days. And I think that out of our gathering, the principles we could write and share is that something like these rules of thumb, you know, they should be universal. You know, no more than 14 minutes, you know, packets, Q&A and content, you know, stuff like that. And this could be our principles, Druid Gathering principles.
Can I bring us back to the design we're working on here? Because I think we all violently agree with each other when it comes to these principles and these methods and what the world should be doing. But at the same time, we have not yet identified who are those 2 or 3 stakeholders that must be delighted for this to become relevant and for this to create value, right? Can we, in the last 9 minutes that we have left, because although Paul thought we were done after 45 seconds, it now seems to take almost 90 minutes for us to align on who to delight for this event. And this has been good conversation, don't get me wrong. But I'm going to force this group to keep moving these little post-its that we have up here and see if we can come up with which are the 2 or 3 that we must analyze to take a next step in terms of knowing and actually creating the narrative of their behavior changes before and after this event. So
I will give up the facilitation associations. Not know if you give up that.
When you say give them up, Paul, what's your meaning there?
It's not a matter of giving up, it's just moving them to a different place, right?
Yeah,
So move whoever needs to be moved, right?
Yes.
What I'm looking for is who is going to be in this top quadrant that we're going to analyze and who will not be there. Or who will not be in the light. It doesn't mean they're not at the event. It just means that we're not going to spend an hour analyzing their behavior changes.
I would also move these. I would keep these 3, maybe. Not sure about.
Can somebody explain to me the beneficiaries of the Druids? What does that mean?
The people that we that will benefit by being there with us, I suppose.
Yeah, our clients. Yes, I love that. I love that. Our
is this the meeting owners or the event owners, or is this different?
It overlaps with the meeting owners, but it could be also different, right? In case of Paul Brand, Paul works for companies, right?
Well, I work a lot more for public policy people. But
is Paul not a druid? I'm just being Dutch for a second.
Druid.
Okay, so Paul is in the green circle, just to be clear, right?
Yeah.
Who is in this circle that's not in the green or in the red circle? I'm just kind of pushing the agenda on who are we talking about here? Are there beneficiaries that are not druids or not event owners?
I mean, I'm kind of struggling with meeting owners because the people I tend to meet who have found themselves in a position within their organization where they are suddenly responsible for this year's sales conference or this year's scientific collaboration conference, and they're often very new to it, or they have very skeptical views about what works, and therefore try and influence and dictate that they want a meeting this year which is slightly better than last year with slightly better feedback, so that they feel that they're getting the career boost that they've been promised by the person who tapped them on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Ruud, your turn. You do this conference." So most of them are unaware, other than their own direct experience of participating in events, what an event could be. And I think that the way my clients self-select themselves is if they like what I'm saying and some of the principles that I talk to them in a kind of a pitch, then they say, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Yes, we're looking for a different way of doing this." So I think the whole that fits nicely with the whole Druid thing, because it's a movement. It's a nearly said religion, but a kind of a group of influencers who all share the same kind of principles of approach.
So I'm going to rewind back to we need to find the words that fit on the poster that we all understand to mean the same thing, right? So if we're looking at these 3, we have meeting owners, the druids, and the beneficiaries of the druids. So those are the things you wrote down. What do we need to wordsmith to make these clearer, or what needs to be?
I think, Karin, we can absolutely combine the beneficiaries of the druids and the meeting owners. I think they're the same people.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
this and this is a similar color, or at least these are
really move around too much on here as a guest. So
there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
These 2 are, and what is the power and interest between those that are in the delight box right now? Because we still have skeptics, we have people who enjoy being in real life, facilitation professionals and associations, and we have other conveners and meeting specialists, and we have these 3. What's the power and interest?
The skeptics, to me, I think I originally put that in. To me, one of the rules for me is that, of course, you leave your ego at the door, and you're in service of the group. But there is nothing more delightful and boosting to my ego than an utter skeptic coming up at the end of an event and saying, "That was brilliant. That was great. What a fantastic," So there's a kind of there's a hidden delight in me in converting somebody who's kind of stalled every opportunity to do something different during the planning phase, and you feel that you're working against them for a lot of the design phase, and then suddenly they become your greatest proponent and advertisement in the organization because of their
So Steve,
experience.
are there any people like that in the meeting owner beneficiaries of the Druids that could be considered skeptics, or because sometimes categories can also contain all of the above, right? So
yeah, so I get it. I think meeting owners is quite an amorphous term, but it's the people who suddenly find themselves responsible for managing the events. And large organizations have event and internal comms departments, who are often involved in the kind of logistics, but there's a more senior team who is actually responsible for the content and the flow and the design of the event. So they are the meeting owners, but again, they're part-time meeting owners. They're not ever full-time meeting owners because they're also the sales director or the CEO or the PR director or whatever. Sorry, Paul.
Back to Paul Brown.
There's an interesting distinction there. There's the meeting owners in the sense of the people who are the face of it, the people who are responsible for putting it together and inviting the people and delivering it.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing hidden behind that, which is the people to whom they are responsible for its success.
Exactly.
And I don't know what to call them, but if a meeting has a purpose and someone is tasked with being the owner and arranging it, who judges whether they did it well? Because that person or people have to also be delighted, especially if we're going to suggest doing it in a way that is not the safe way, the way it's always been done with marginal changes.
Yeah. Perfectly eloquent, Paul. That's exactly what I was trying to say.
I don't know what to call them though.
Yeah, well, so meeting owners is too wide a term, but it is those people who happen to be challenged with organizing this event this year. And whether it's part of their personal development or whether it's part of their kind of their team has the mantle this year, they are anxious and nervous about doing something very new. They're perhaps even a little skeptical and confronted almost by a professional meeting facilitator being involved, who's asking very difficult questions like, what are you actually going to achieve, and how will you know when you've done it, and what does it actually look like when you've achieved it? These sort of things well, it just needs to be better than last time. So it's a very difficult thing, but I think almost if one of the outcomes was a set of principles or a guide to how to create different, engaging, valuable events, then that's what I could get behind.
Absolutely.
May I suggest this in the last minute, just to wrap it up, right? What if we call the event owners with control access and decision making, right? That's what makes them an event owner of some sort. And we have their beneficiaries, right? Or the beneficiary of the Druids, who might be the counterparts that are more likely to be involved directly because they are tasked with a subset of the activities of the event. And then we have the Druid. So I think if we cluster the demand side on the one hand and the supply side on the other side, I think that would be a very kind of flat way of addressing these two.
The word obligation comes to mind. Who are those that are obligated to making it work as well?
Yeah.
So
don't forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even the event owner, as you described, Steve, the guy who is in charge, is tasked to create the event, he has to satisfy a sponsor, right? It could be the VP, it could be the CEO,
executive sponsor, or whatever.
Yeah.
There's always a sponsor involved, right? And though the sponsors are the beneficiaries, the Druids also.
The end client or the end sponsor.
The one who's writing the check. Yeah.
Absolutely. One
maybe. Yes.
Oh, the whole thing,
All right. So on that bombshell, I think we've decided that the two stakeholders that we need to analyze, and there might be more, but those two, I think I would recommend to analyze in the next session. Each takes about an hour to analyze. We're going to keep the idea quarantine open, so you can keep adding stuff there. If you think of other events like Fresh or the Berlin conference or the Dîner Blanc, or whichever one it might be, drop them in there. And maybe Paul, you can liaise back with Martin, because the validation on these two that we're going to analyze, once we decided, we're not going back, right?
Absolutely,
So we're just going to keep moving forward. If there are others you need to have analyzed here, I think you need to think about that too, because it takes an hour per stakeholder to analyze. You have to go through the analysis to define the behavior changes.
Okay, but should we do one session for one stakeholder and another session for the other stakeholder?
Yeah, I suggest to split it. Yeah,
split. Okay, so next session will be on Druids or
it's up to you. Yeah.
Anyone?
Well, I think we need clarity around why we want to be delighted
Yeah.
in this. So
Druids first.
why not? There you go.
Well, the order and sequence doesn't matter. I think we'll just copy and say, okay, these are the two we're going to focus on. At the beginning of next session, we can decide which one we do first. It's much harder to do yourself than to do the other. So it might be better to start with the other first.
That's a good point.
Starting with the other then, Ruud?
Okay, maybe on that note.
We'll leave it to whoever shows up at the next session. But Paul, I do have to urge you, we do need 7 people at least, preferably more. You can invite 14 or 21 people, and then we can analyze them in parallel and report out to each other at the end with twice the speed.
That sounds great. Yeah.
So the small task for Paul is to gather 14 druids or people that might be event owners and to show up at the next session.
I would share that with Paul, Karin, Steve. Please bring along someone else you think could be of value to this design process. By all means, dear colleagues, bring them in, because the more the better. And the ones who were in this team are the ones who go free.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So just to kind of focus on what that means, what we've done today is an exercise that normally takes 19 minutes. It took us almost 90 minutes, because the druids are wise people who have a hard time taking decisions or have a lot of input, and both are fine. Next time, we're going to spend about 51 minutes going through pre-post-event empathy map, creating the event canvas narrative, so that you have a complete picture on that one stakeholder. And then the exercise there would be to actually go and validate the stakeholder's narrative with a number of these stakeholders, right? So I think this would be on Martin and Paul, or somebody that wants to volunteer to do that, so that you actually validate that what we've come up with has some relevance or needs tweaking based on what we thought versus what the reality really is. After that, we consolidate that to an event delta, and then we go into the fun part, which is, this is just the analysis part. The prototyping starts after you've done the analysis. That's when the designing starts. Good.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I'll share the recording with you, Paul, and then you'll tell us when the next one is.
Absolutely. I'll send a doodle, but probably in 4 weeks' time. We try to make it every month, if that's okay for everybody.
Well, I haven't checked. Are you coming to Birmingham at the end of the month, or are you not coming this year?
Not sure yet, my friend. I'm still struggling here with a couple of conflicting events in India. If it's, I'm not, I'd love to go to Birmingham.
Well,